Hello, everyone. This is Central Inside. I am here. I am Michael Polson. I'm here with Will McMean, Colin Rogers, and Grant Deasing, and we're just gonna get our views and our topics on this book. So I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was a really good description on racism in the Midwest, and especially in our hometown of Omaha, because we hear all about the racism and stuff in the South, but we never really hear about it in the Midwest and how bad it was here, especially in our hometown. And it just gave me a really good insight of how racism was in Omaha and how it was back then. And I thought it was really accurate, especially when the guest speaker came and told us more specific things about how it was at Central, especially because he went there and he actually knew how it was. And I thought it was really good.
Yeah, Mike, I agree with that. And in Omaha, Nebraska, in 1960s, uh, this gave a good view of the integration, the communities of Omaha Central at that time, and also gave a great description of the basketball team and their problems during that time.
Yeah, I'd like to agree because the basketball it gave a good description of the basketball team and all the prejudices and all the racism they had to go through, and it also just kind of gives you some insight of just like how it was and everything they had to go through.
Yeah, I really enjoyed reading the book. I felt like it really gave a good description of how the black people lived back then and what they had to deal with and the hate that they had. And then it was just an overall good book.
So first we're gonna talk about Dwayne Dillard, and he's the main character of the book, and we're gonna talk kind of about how he came to Central and how his early life was. So first, his parents are Phyllis Smith and Rufus Dwayne Dillard. He moved to a bunch of different military bases as a kid because his dad was a military dad, and he attended many different schools. He was an average student, but he was also a troublemaker. Um, and he was placed in foster home for a few months when his mother was ill and his father was in Germany doing military things, and his parents got divorced when he was 10. He lived with his dad for a short period of time when he was 12, and then in ninth grade he lived with his dad in California, but returned to Omaha to live with his grandmother. And then that's when actually Warren Marquise asked Dwayne to go play basketball for Central High School. So that's how he ended up at Central to begin his sophomore year.
Yeah, and Dwayne Dillard, um, as a very good basketball player, he was their center, and he was 6'7", 200 pounds. He's a big man. He was their dominant center. Him and Willie Frazier, John Biddle, Roy Hunter, and Phil Griffin, the starting five for Central. Willie Frazier was their power forward, very good, and he also played quarterback, and he was 6'1", very good athlete. And we also got John Biddle, who was also one of their other starters, who was 5'11", and he was a very big guy. He lifted weights a lot, and he was their unofficial captain. And his nickname everybody on the team called him was the Magician. He kind of had a wink at you persona, and he was their point guard. And then Roy Hunter, 5'10". He could jump. He could jump out of the gym. Very soft spoken. He was one of their guards. He was a very good athlete. And also Phil Griffin, senior, 6'1". He was their weak forward, and he was very quick. Could get to the ball very fast, move around the court very good. Um,
Now, other characters were the two girlfriends of Willie Frazier. Let's talk about them. One was Vicky Dallas, and the other was Sue Glenn. Now, Willie Frazier was with Vicky Dallas the longest, and Vicky Dallas was the more popular girl in school. She was a pretty cheerleader, student council member. She was known as Central's it girl. She was also very smart. And the one thing she probably faced the most with being with Willie Frazier is that they were an interracial couple. And Vicky's parents did not agree with that. Next, during their relationship, Willie Frazier got with Sue Glenn. So Willie is kind of a player.
Kind of a player.
Kind of a player.
He's pretty much a player.
Sue Glenn was also known as Frazier's girlfriend before Dallas, but what Vicky did not know is that Sue Glenn was pregnant with Willie's baby, which caused a lot of attention. Let's see. Yeah, I guess all I got on those two.
All right. So Dr. Gaylord Mahler, he was the co-assistant principal in 1971, and then you got Arthur Nelson. He had white hair. He was kind of a thicker dude. He wasn't as tall, but he was, pretty fat. He was 67, and this was his 24th year as the principal, and the students were kind of intimidated by him just because of his looks and how he treated them.
Yeah, and then we're going to talk about George Wallace. So he was running for presidency. He was the governor of Alabama at the time, and he was in Omaha running for his campaign to be the president. And we're going to get on more of why he was there and kind of more the conflicts about him being in Omaha later. So we're going to kind of get talk about the setting. And so the setting was Omaha Central High School, which it's right in the middle of downtown pretty much, and it was opened in 1859, and in the time 1967 it was 2,377 students, and Omaha Central was considered a melting pot, because there was 1/5 students were black, 1/4 students were Jewish, and the rest was pretty much all white, Catholic, Protestants, and it was just really kind of just a melting pot all around, because really not what am I trying to say, guys? It was not like it was mostly white people. That's what I'm trying to get the point at. So it was very not diverse.
Yeah, and it was also a very good school. It ranked top American high schools in 1960s as measured by the National Merit Test results. And there's just a lot of like diversity in the school, so it was very good.
And Principal Nelson always wanted his school to be top at academics. That's what he wanted it to be.
Going on the melting pot, I also want to talk about how there is much tension between black people and the Jewish community, because the Jewish community lived in the north side, and they did not get along. And the Jewish mostly controlled most of the stores and stuff in that time, and where all the jobs were. So all there was left for black people was their main source was meat packing, and I think that took a toll on Central's like diversity when you get to school and you see a Jewish and a black person. Also, Central, speaking of like talking about diverse, Central was in the middle of Omaha, so everybody was going there. It wasn't just one specific type of race or religion. Like everybody was going there, which is why it was a melting pot.
And also at the time this was happening, all of the faculty was white minus one teacher.
So we're gonna get on topic of the basketball team and kind of how they were treated, how they played and stuff like that. And so we're gonna talk first about how Coach Warren, what his coaching style was. He was more relaxed, open to improvement. He had a special way with the kids, and he was just really good with the kids. And he treated his players. He was like a father to them. He brought them collared shirts, ties, pants, and coats, so they could meet the dress code of the school. And he would pay for their meals, and he was just pretty much a great father figure for them, and a great guy that they could look up to and feel important, because they were getting backlash for just being who they are and being African American, and he was one that showed them equality and what it meant like to not see race between each other.
So there was a lot of racism that happened towards the basketball team. So sometimes there was a lot of violence in July 3rd on 1966 near the north side. There was a lot of violence and civil disorder. And this disturbance lasted for 3 days, and a lot of windows were broken, stores were looted, and gangs of the youth were just all over the streets. And during that time, there was a basketball center that was built because I believe that it would kind of help solve the problem of the youth because there wasn't much to do. They kind of wanted to just keep the youth off the streets and keep them out of trouble. So building a basketball center would be good for them. And also, when they would go play against different teams, so they would get a lot of racial slurs hurled at them. For example, when they went to go play Rummel.
I'm pretty sure that's Roncalli now.
Rummel?
It is Roncalli now.
That is Roncalli.
Really? When they went to play there, they got a ton of racial slurs yelled at them while they were trying to play. And they just had to overcome all of that and just keep playing and just play through all that adversity.
And to go on your topic of July 3rd, that was kind of like, I think it was kind of like the broken store, stealing stuff. That's kind of like, remember way back in Ferguson, Missouri, there was a riot.
Oh, yeah.
And that kind of, where people just broke into stores.
Yeah.
And just took a bunch of stuff. So that's kind of like that, to get a better picture on that.
I would say the most biggest racial symbol that had happened with the team was when all 5 of them started. So all 5 black people started, and the principal was not a fan of that at all. And when they reported in the newspaper, Don Lee was the reporter on that, and that's when the name the Rhythm Boys came into the mix.
I heard he didn't mean. Some people can take that the nickname Rhythm Boys kind of offensive, but he didn't mean to make it offensive. It was meant to describe how well the 5 starters work together, but some people have taken that in a different direction, saying how it's kind of racist, saying rhythm, kind of just like how black people have rhythm and they like jazz music and the boys.
Like a stereotype.
Yeah, it's just kind of stereotypical.
And then what was I gonna say? That guest speaker that came in, he said that like half the players didn't really care about the name and half the players thought it was offensive.
Really?
So we're on the topic of segregation right now, and I'm just going to give you a few facts about what the segregation was like in Omaha. So they had a survey done in 1965 about the racial segregation in Omaha, and they figured out that it had the same level of residential segregation of Birmingham, Alabama. And if you know anything about the segregation in Birmingham, Alabama, it was terrible. Blacks were treated horribly. They had the fire hoses were sprayed at them. They were getting beat by the police, and it was horrible. There were a few Omaha neighborhoods that were off limits for blacks, and it's just stupid, if you ask me. One of them was St. Anne's Parish, and the other was St. Francis Cabrini Parish, and these two had a common agreement to not let the blacks around because they thought that it wasn't good for the racial attitude.
That could also go with the segregation of just inside the school central. They had the cafeteria was segregated, and it wasn't like an actual thing that involved the school, but like everyone knew that whites go to one cafeteria, blacks to the other cafeteria. And our guest speaker that one time, he told us that he went to the wrong cafeteria for like 5 days straight, and then he got that note that said you don't belong, this is a white cafeteria or something like that. And just that can show you like a real view or a picture of how that was. And there also in Central, there was a segregation of um, different gender hallways. That was pretty real thing to realize.
Yeah, and also with this racism in Central, a lot of the black students saw George Wallace as a just kind of a personification of evil and racism, and they didn't really like him. And there was also a big protest at George Wallace's rally at Civic Auditorium. A couple of people who protested there were Robert Burns and John McCassin from Creighton University, also Marla West from Omaha University, and Daryl Ewer, Howard Rosenberg, Nancy Ossenberg, and also Dillard. Those were some of Central students who protested at Wallace's rally.
I'm pretty sure at that rally, there was about 5,400 people that attended, and out of all those people, there were 500 protesters, and those protesters were very much abused and were not treated equally to their rights of protesting peacefully, because right when they were there, a police officer grabbed his mace and started spraying the crowd to the protesters, and that demonstrated how unfair and racist these police were at the time, and Wallace did nothing about it.
And we're gonna get on the topic of Howard Stevenson. He was a 16-year-old dropout of Tech High School, and I'm pretty sure Tech is used. It's shut down. It's not a school anymore, but it's used for I think it's the Omaha headquarters, the education offices. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And then so Stevenson was shot and killed by white off-duty. Oh my god. Fuck you. So we're talking about Howard Stevenson, and Stevenson was a 16-year-old dropout of Tech High School. Tech High School isn't a thing anymore. It's shut down. It's used for the Omaha education headquarters now. And he was shot and killed by a white off-duty cop when he tried to crawl through a broken window out of a pawn shop on 24th Street. And Dwayne Dillard and the students, they created a protest of this, and Dillard led them, and he lit the trash cans on fire.
And during this protest, he was arrested for the suspicion of possession of Molotov cocktails, and he tried to explain this to his coach, by saying that Webster and him were playing basketball at Bryant Courts, and when they left, Goodwin drove past and offered them a ride, and they said they were just passengers in the car, and they had actually no part in the whole thing that happened. So it was just kind of a big, it wasn't a good thing.
And obviously there's a relationship between North Side black residents and the Omaha police force, and it was just the police had a reputation of beating you first and asking questions later, and this is a big like problem around the world.
That's terrible.
And just like I remember, what was that case? And it was in L.A. I forget what the guy's name was, but there's all around these everywhere. There's one in Ferguson again, I'm pretty sure, but about how cops beat or kill African Americans for no reason when they're not haven't done anything.
Yeah, like you mean when self-defense
Yeah.
isn't a factor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that happens a lot in our day, and a lot of accusations of that, and just pretty. I remember that Facebook. Anyone remember that Facebook video? Facebook Live. There's a
Which one?
Facebook Live
No.
video, and how an African American just got shot
Really?
right in the car.
On a Facebook Live video?
Yes, the girlfriend was taking a Facebook Live video.
Oh, was that in Minnesota?
I don't know where it was, but I just remember it. The
Oh.
girl,
I
the
think I saw
girlfriend was
that.
taking a
That
Facebook
was like
Live
a year
video.
ago.
Really? Yeah, it was not that long ago. Girlfriend was taking a Facebook Live video.
Huh.
Cop just shoots this guy, and it's on Facebook Live.
I don't know if I saw that
It's insane. It's insane.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So after the protest was all over with, Dillard was then bailed out of jail, and Coach Marquise had to decide going into the state tournament what Dwayne's consequence was gonna be, and Coach Marquise obviously had a bunch of people contacting him about what to do, but he knew he was gonna make a personal decision. So like for example, like his phone was ringing a lot, people were threatening him. so he had to eventually disconnect his phone, and even some people were burning wooden crosses in his front yard. Crazy.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah. All right. So Steve Moss refused to go to Lincoln to play in the state tournament just because of all the stuff that had happened in the last 3 days with all the drama with the coach and Dillard and all that. And he also thought that it was not a good idea because of the protests and all the disorder that was going on. Yeah.
And then Steve Moss thought Coach Warren as a pimp because he thought he exploited his black players, and he thought they were being used athletes over academics, like a student athlete. He thought they were just being used for just athletics.
Yeah, and with all the disorder in Omaha at that time, the state basketball tournament was moved from Omaha to Lincoln. And for that game, Coach Marquise, for the state tournament, Coach Marquise had to bench Dillard for the first game. And the team reacted. They were pretty angry, and they wanted to take a vote. And they said that they wouldn't play without him. And the coach ended up yelling at them to get them on the court, and they ended up going.
I think the craziest thing for me was that the security at these state tournaments. Supposedly there were two dozen helmeted state troopers, whatever a helmeted state trooper is. That's pretty serious. The Lincoln Police was also there. Many dogs were there. The assistant principal and central teachers were there. So there's a lot of people protecting these players at this game.
So Central basketball, they ended up with a 20-2 record. They lost. They made it to the state championship. They lost to Lincoln Northwest. So they still finished with a pretty good, a really good record, but did not end up getting that gold on the championship.
So yeah, as Michael said, Central lost and Tech also lost.
And they did their only loss in the regular season was against Omaha Tech.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Colin.
Tech handled this loss, and they were very unsportsmanlike conduct, and they got into lots of fights, and just they weren't like good losers. They were sore losers, as you would say. Central on the other side was very good and nice about it. They took the loss well. They were disappointed, but they didn't show it. Like they didn't get into fights like Tech did, and they congratulated the other team on their win.
So after the state championship, we found out that Delmar Givhan and Diane Jacobson, a biracial couple, that they called off their relationship, and that's kind of rough.
But I think that's pretty cool how he was in the book.
And he came and spoke to us.
Yeah, I really enjoyed having him in class.
Yeah, it was pretty nice.
Yeah, just to kind of see the person you talked to and how he was in the book. Really, really cool. I don't know why, just cool.
Yeah.
So after basketball was done, Dwayne Dillard was expelled for behavior deemed intolerable. And honestly, to me, it seems a little fishy that the principal decided to do that now that basketball's over. But that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, just made him seem like he was just there for basketball.
Yeah. So after that, he ended up going to college at Eastern Michigan, but he was the only freshman starter there, but he was only there for a year, and he ended up leaving because he found the campus too small and didn't really like it. He was also offered a scholarship to St. Mary's College in California, and he was there, but he was only there for about a week, and then he ended up leaving there too. And he was also offered another scholarship to play at Cal Berkeley, and he refused that because he wanted to stay with his mom. And
this is kind of like, so I mean, obviously we can see that he didn't last at his college very long, and it's kind of like some people today have this problem where they need a support system around them, and he had that support system at Central, but when he's off on his own, he didn't have that support system, which is probably the reason why he couldn't last at these schools.
Mm-hmm.
And then after all that happened, from 1969 to 1976, he was with the Harlem Globetrotters, and the Globetrotters was described as a white man's favorite black road show. And I'm gonna say this means that the white people love watching the Globetrotters, and the Globetrotters is mostly made up of all black people. And I've seen it before, and it's actually pretty good.
I love the
I
Harlem
was gonna see him,
Globetrotters.
but then I didn't.
I
Why didn't you-
had courtside seats
Was it
once.
fun?
Why didn't you
What?
go
I
see
had
it?
Oh, they're-
courtside seats once.
Yeah, they're
Why didn't you
great.
see him, Mike?
I think I had some going on.
Oh,
Not sure. But let's just yeah. But after he quit the Globetrotters back in '76, like Colin said. He worked a variety of jobs. He did have two kids. He didn't have much contact with them. He was married and he had a brief marriage to Ruth Stocker, and then he met Rochelle Epps. He moved back to California with his dad. After his dad died, he had a drinking problem and it was abusive. Then he divorced Rochelle in 2000. He worked for TSA in Phoenix, and he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, but he didn't go to chemotherapy. That's when he died in 2008 at the age of 59.
Yeah. So do you want to move on to what happened to the rest of the people?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
listen,
the-
this is kind of we're gonna
So-
list. Yeah.
I'll talk about Phil Griffin. Phil Griffin was one of the forwards on the team, and he was actually very soon after high school he was married, and he became a father in 1969, and as like stereotypically as black people did, he ended up working at a meatpacking house. He ended up playing basketball at the Grandview Junior College and UNO, but left school in 1971 when his second son was born. In the 1970s, he worked at the U.S. Post Office, UPS, and the Happy Cab Company. He divorced in 1979 and remarried the year later, and now he has become a long-haul truck driver based in Omaha since 1990.
Now Roy Hunter, also the main character in the book. He played basketball for 2 seasons at North Platte Junior College. Met his wife, returned to Omaha in the 1970s. Worked at health clubs, gyms, physical therapy clinics. He had 2 kids. And then in the early 80s, he earned a bachelor's and master's degree in health and exercise science from UNO. Held positions at the Nebraska Department of Health, Pinnacle Health Promotions, and Fremont Area Medical Center, and Blue Cross, Shield of Nebraska, and others. Yeah.
So also, John Biddle, what happened after high school is he played basketball for a year at Dana College, and he also won a scholarship to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where he played basketball and football, and he also met his wife there. He went to the University of Minnesota after a car accident which cut short his athletic career, and he ended up earning a business degree, and later he worked for IBM. Among that group, they installed the first ATM machines for Bank of America, and John Biddle, he was also a father of 2. He was divorced, and he ended up living in Las Vegas later, and worked as a substitute teacher of math and science for middle schools.
Willie Frazier, he was drafted into the U.S. Army after high school and served in Japan as an MP. He also played basketball and football for the military teams there. I'm assuming it'd be like a club team, something like that. He lost part of his arm in an industrial workplace accident, and then he ran a coffee shop in downtown Omaha and worked at several veterans' homes, and now he lives in Omaha with his wife.
Another character was Steve Moss. Now he was the one who quit during the state tournament, and don't really respect him for that. But now he has realized after high school, he realized his dream of attending Creighton University, and he played 5 games for the varsity in 1971. And he then, after those 5 games, went to Dana College, and he moved there and graduated from there. And then he moved to Anchorage, Alaska in 1977, where he raised a family and now has made a career in elementary school teaching education.
Now Vicky Dulles.
Vicky.
man. She can. Oh, woo! She
Batty.
continued. She continued diary into her early 20s. She went to Texas, got married, had a son, divorced, and then she actually got diagnosed with depression in the 90s. She went to social working, earned her master's degree from Denver, the University of Denver. She became a treatment counselor for public schools in Colorado.
Wow, looks like she really got her life
She
together.
really did. She
Yeah.
really did. For her.
Yep. And Coach Marquise, he ended up teaching biology at Central through the 1970s, and later he retired in 1981, and ended up dying to lung cancer in 2005 at the age of 84.
Bless up.
Alright, and then George Wallace, he served as Alabama governor from 1971 to 1979, and then again from 1983 to 1987. In 1972, he made his bid for presidency, but he ended up getting shot by a bullet that paralyzed him from the waist down.
Ooh, let's go.
That's not a good thing. And then he made another failed run in 1976. And in the 1970s, he renounced racist views, and then later on, he died in 1998.
No.
Too bad. I'm sorry. So we're gonna talk about how this book relates to our lives and how it impacted us and stuff like that. So I'll go first. I would say it relates because it just opens our eyes to racism across the world and especially in our hometown and how it was back then. But we do go to Scott, which is not really a diverse school, and we don't really see. I don't really see the racism like in our life today, like where we live. But it just opens our eyes to how it was back then, and especially in Omaha.
Yeah, I agree with Michael. I feel the same. Going to Scott, there's not that much diversity, and it just kind of opens our eyes to all the other things that have happened in Omaha, and it just helps us learn some of the history about where we live, and it's just good overall.
Yeah, I agree with that because before reading this book, I did not realize how much history the integration and racism had in Omaha and through Omaha Central at this time.
Yeah, I agree with what they all said about how it opened their eyes to racism, because I feel like I've never actually seen racism happen. Like I've read about it in the news and heard stories about it, but I've never actually seen any actual cases of racism.
So now we're gonna rate the book. We have 3 rating systems. The first one is I love this book and I'll read it again. The second one is I like this book but I wouldn't read it again. And the third one is I absolutely hated this book. So I'll go first. I would say I'm in the middle. Which is I like this book but I wouldn't read it again because I feel like it's more of a factual book and I feel like you can't really I mean, I guess you can, but I feel like for me, I couldn't find a new twist on it. I don't know how to read it because it's all pretty much facts and history. So yeah, that's for me.
Yeah, I agree with Michael. I liked the book, but I wouldn't read it again because if I were to read a book that I would want to read again, I feel like it would have to have more of a story behind it and maybe have some twists and stuff. So I liked it, but the facts and everything I wouldn't read it again.
Yeah, I agree with what they said about how they were in the middle, so like a 2, that they liked the book but they wouldn't read it again. And I think that this is true because it is a factual book and it's just like a one-time read. I don't see how I could want to read this book again. Even though it was a pretty good book, I just wouldn't read it again.
Well, I think I love this book and would read it again because I found it very interesting about different things that happened during this time, and I feel like if I did read it again, I'd find stuff that I didn't see the first time, or I'd experience it differently now knowing what happened in the past.
Yeah, I would recommend it to any other student or in the Omaha area because I feel like it's just kind of opens your eyes to the history of Omaha and everything.
Yeah, I'd also recommend this book, especially. I recommend to everyone just to look at racism and to get awareness, but I'd also recommend it mostly for Omaha students because it kind of shows just like Omaha youth because it shows them how racism was, especially in our own home city.
Yeah, I'd recommend this book also because it shows the history of Omaha and how it used to be, as we might think that it was like a perfect place, but it shows that it really wasn't, that there was racism here, and that stuff did happen here.
Yes, I would completely agree with that. I'd also recommend it to anybody in Omaha, not just students, but any adults like my parents, because I feel like they probably don't know the exact history that was during the time of their parents.
So now we have a fun quiz for our viewers here today. We're gonna do a little multiple choice quiz. So we're gonna say the question, and we're gonna give you 3 answers that it could be, and you're gonna call in for the right one. First question is, who had Willie Frazier's kid? For A is Sue Glenn, 2 is Vicky Dallas, 3 is Diane Jacobson. So call in when you got the right answer. Next question is, what was the Central Boys basketball team record? A is 21-1, 22-0, and third one is 20-2. Call in when you get that one. Third question is, what team did Central lose to in the state championship? A is Omaha Benson, B is Lincoln Northeast, 3 is Omaha Tech. Call in when you got that one. Question number 4. Who gave the nickname the Rhythm Boys? Was it A, Don Lee, B, George Wallace, C, Roy Hunter? Call in when you got that one. Thanks for coming to watch Central Inside. This is our podcast for this week. See you next time.